I remember that night so clearly, though at first it seemed like nothing more than a way to escape the heaviness that had been weighing on me for weeks. Work had drained me dry, life at home felt like an endless cycle of silence and disappointment, and I was craving even just a small slice of peace. That's why I ended up at that restaurant. An unassuming little place at the edge of town with dim lighting, soft jazz humming from hidden speakers, and the faint smell of garlic and butter drifting through the air. I had eaten there before but never alone. That night I wanted quiet. No phone calls, no small talk, just a warm meal and maybe a glass of wine. I didn't know then that this dinner, this ordinary night out, would mark the beginning of the most terrifying and transformative chapter of my life. I slid into a booth tucked against the wall, a spot where I could watch people but still stay unseen. The place was busy but not crowded. Families sharing pasta, a couple on a date, a group of coworkers laughing too loudly at the bar. It felt normal. Safe. A young waitress approached my table, her smile bright but not forced. She had tired eyes, the kind you only notice if you're paying attention. She introduced herself, set down a menu and asked what I wanted to drink. I ordered a red wine, something to take the edge off. She scribbled it down and walked away, but something in her expression lingered with me. It was quick, almost nothing like a flicker of hesitation. As I waited, I let my thoughts drift. The weight of the week pressed against me. I thought about the arguments I'd had recently, the tension with certain people in my life, the uneasy sense that I was walking on fragile ground. But I shook it off. Tonight was supposed to be about forgetting. When the waitress returned, she carried a single glass of wine. The stem trembled slightly in her hand as she placed it on the table. She smiled, but her lips were tight, her eyes darting quickly toward the bar, then back at me. For a moment I thought maybe I was imagining it. "Your wine," she said softly, setting it down. I thanked her and she turned as if to leave. But then, as quick as lightning, she slipped something beneath the edge of my napkin. A folded piece of paper. She didn't break stride, didn't pause, didn't make eye contact. She just walked away, her back straight, her shoulders stiff. I frowned, confused, and waited until I was sure no one was watching. Slowly, I slid the napkin aside and unfolded the paper beneath it. There, in hurried, almost frantic handwriting, were 4 words that made my blood run cold. "Don't drink it." At first, I laughed under my breath, thinking it must be some kind of joke. Maybe the staff played pranks on customers, maybe this was her strange way of flirting, maybe it wasn't even meant for me. But as I glanced up, I saw her again across the room, standing stiffly by the counter with her order pad in hand. She wasn't looking at me directly, but I could see the tension in her face. My hand froze over the glass. The deep red wine shimmered under the low lights. I felt a chill ripple through me. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. I leaned back in my booth, my heart beginning to pound against my ribs. The room suddenly felt different. The laughter at the bar too loud, the clinking of cutlery too sharp. Every movement, every glance from another diner made me wonder if they knew something I didn't. I told myself not to panic, not to overreact. But deep inside I felt it. A shift in the air, a warning I couldn't ignore. That glass of wine was no longer just a drink. It was a threat. And though I didn't know it yet, those 4 words, the waitress's desperate note, were about to unravel everything I thought I knew about my life, my friends, and even myself. The folded note burned in my hand as if the ink itself carried danger. "Don't drink it." 4 words that turned a normal night into a storm of suspicion. I slipped the paper into my pocket before anyone could see, my fingers trembling, my breath shallow. I looked at the glass again. Just moments ago, it had been nothing more than a comfort, wine to ease my mind, to wash away the bitterness of my day. Now it sat there, shimmering under the lights, daring me to trust it. A ruby red trap. My first thought was ridiculous. Maybe she'd mixed up tables, maybe it wasn't meant for me. But the waitress's face said otherwise. She stood by the counter, pretending to write something down, but her eyes, those weary, urgent eyes, kept flicking toward me, then away. Every second, her tension screamed louder. I wrapped my hand around the glass, testing myself, pretending to lift it to my lips. Immediately I saw the waitress stiffen. She shook her head almost imperceptibly, her lips parting as if to speak, then pressing together again. That tiny gesture froze me. I set the glass down slowly, carefully, as though it contained poison. Maybe it did. The laughter around me felt distorted, warped, like a soundtrack in the wrong scene. I scanned the room, my eyes jumping from face to face. The couple at the corner booth leaning in close, whispering. The bartender polishing glasses, his gaze lingering on me a little too long. A man at the bar swirling his drink, not drinking it, just staring into the liquid like he was waiting for something. My skin crawled. Was this paranoia, or had I just stumbled into something carefully planned? The waitress returned, moving quickly but trying not to draw attention. She carried a jug of water in one hand, menus tucked under her arm. When she reached my table, she leaned forward as if topping off my glass, her hair falling around her face like a curtain. Her voice was barely a breath. "Don't touch it. Don't let them know you know." My chest tightened. Her hand trembled slightly as she poured, water sloshing against the rim of my glass. Then just as quickly she was gone again, straightening her shoulders, plastering on a smile for another table. My mind raced. Who was them? What did they want with me? I tried to keep calm, to act normal, but every second felt like I was balancing on a blade's edge. My fork scraped against the plate louder than I intended. My hands wouldn't stay still. I felt eyes on me, heavy, watchful, hidden behind casual glances. And that's when I realized something chilling. This wasn't random. Whoever they were, they weren't just targeting someone. They were targeting me. I glanced at the glass one more time, and for the first time in my life I felt like a simple choice, whether to lift it to my lips or not, could decide whether I lived or died. I sat frozen in that booth, pretending to eat, pretending to be unaware. But in my pocket, the note burned like a secret message from fate itself. One thing was certain. That waitress hadn't just saved me from a drink. She had thrown me into the middle of something far darker than I could have ever imagined. And whatever it was, I was already in too deep to turn back. I sat there staring at the glass, my appetite gone, my hands cold despite the warm air of the restaurant. The words replayed in my head over and over like a broken record. Don't drink it. Don't let them know. The logical part of me screamed to get up, walk out, never look back. But leaving too suddenly could draw attention. Whoever they were watching. I could feel it, eyes that followed me every time I shifted in my seat, shadows that leaned just a little too far to hear. I tried to steady my breathing. My fork hovered over my plate, but every bite I took tasted like ash. I forced myself to chew, to swallow, to pretend nothing was wrong. If I played this wrong, it wouldn't matter whether I drank the wine or not. The waitress passed by once more, her hand brushing the edge of my table, a quick glance that said more than words ever could. I saw fear in her eyes, yes, but also urgency. She wanted me to understand something. This wasn't a mistake. I shifted in my seat, pretending to stretch. My gaze wandered casually toward the bar. That man, the one swirling his drink, still hadn't taken a sip. He was staring at me. Not in the obvious way a drunk might ogle someone, but with a cold, calculating interest. Our eyes met, and he smiled faintly, like he knew a secret I didn't. A chill swept through me. I turned my focus to the table by the window. A couple was laughing, but their laughter stopped abruptly whenever I moved. They leaned in, whispering, glancing my way as though I were the subject of their amusement, or their plan. Everywhere I looked, suspicion grew. Was the bartender involved? The man at the bar? The couple? Or was this some delusion, some paranoia feeding on the waitress's warning? My hand drifted toward my phone under the table. Maybe I should call someone. The police? Friend? But what would I say? A waitress slipped me a note about poisoned wine? They'd laugh at me, tell me I was imagining things. And if this ran deeper than some random incident, if it was personal, calling the wrong person might expose me further. The thought made my blood run cold. Because deep down, something in my gut whispered the truth. This wasn't random. Someone wanted me out of the picture. The waitress reappeared briefly, her tray balanced carefully, her face perfectly blank for the benefit of others. But as she turned from another table, her eyes locked onto mine, and for just an instant she mouthed a single word. Wait. The word rattled through me like thunder. Wait for what? Wait for who? I sat there, frozen, feeling like prey in the middle of a hunt I hadn't even realized I was part of. The glass of wine still glimmered in the light, untouched, a silent warning of how close I had already come. And in that moment, one truth became painfully clear. Whatever was happening tonight wasn't just about a poisoned drink. It was about me. Minutes crawled by like hours. I kept pretending to eat, moving food around my plate, but I didn't taste a single bite. My senses were sharpened to every sound, every movement. The scrape of a chair. The clink of glass. The sudden bursts of laughter that felt too rehearsed, too forced. And then she returned. The waitress moved with purpose, balancing a tray in one hand, a pitcher of water in the other. She didn't even glance at me at first. She served the table beside mine, exchanged polite words, even chuckled at something one of the customers said. To anyone else it was normal, invisible. But I could see her hands trembling. When she finally reached my table, she leaned in just enough to set down a small dish. Her hair fell across her face, shielding her expression. Her voice was no louder than a whisper carried on breath. "Don't leave yet. They're watching you." The words hit me like ice water down my spine. My hand froze halfway to my fork. I wanted to ask her who. I wanted to grab her arm and demand answers. But she straightened up too quickly, her professional mask snapping back into place. She gave me a polite smile as though we'd exchanged nothing more than pleasantries and walked away. I sat rigid in my seat, every muscle tense. My pulse thudded so loudly I was sure someone could hear it. They're watching you. Not just random eyes in the crowd. Not paranoia. Not coincidence. This was deliberate. I fought the urge to turn my head too quickly, but I stole small glances around the room. The man at the bar was gone. The couple by the window were gathering their things, though their eyes darted toward me more often than toward the door. I reached for the wine glass again, but not to drink. I lifted it slightly, enough to swirl it under the light. Something caught my eye. For just a second I thought I saw a shimmer, a faint residue clinging to the edges like oil on water. My stomach twisted. This was real. The note wasn't paranoia. The waitress wasn't crazy. Someone had tried to drug me. The room closed in around me. Who would want to hurt me like this? Why? My mind rifled through the possibilities. I thought about people from my past. People I'd wronged, people who envied me, people who had reasons to wish me gone. But nothing made sense. Then, almost by accident, I noticed something. At the far corner of the restaurant, near the back exit, a man in a dark coat was sitting alone. He hadn't eaten a bite of his food. He wasn't drinking. He was just watching. His gaze locked onto me, and when our eyes met, he didn't look away. A shiver ran through me. Before I could process it, the waitress passed by again. This time she dropped a clean napkin onto my table, the movement so casual it looked like nothing at all. But as soon as it hit the surface, I saw the faintest scrawl in pen along the edge. "Leave through the kitchen. I'll cover you." My chest tightened. This wasn't just a warning anymore. This was survival. Whatever was happening here, it wasn't random. It wasn't chance. It was a setup. And somehow, terrifyingly, it was about me. My hands trembled beneath the table as I slid the napkin into my lap, hiding it from view. "Leave through the kitchen. I'll cover you." The words were messy, rushed, written by someone who knew she had only seconds. I didn't look toward her. I couldn't risk giving away that we were connected. Instead, I forced myself to stab another piece of food with my fork, chewing slowly, pretending that nothing at all was wrong while my pulse thundered in my ears. The man in the corner hadn't moved. His dark coat made him look like a shadow itself, but I could feel the weight of his gaze pressing into me. If he was part of this, if he was the reason for the poison drink, then leaving wouldn't be easy. I waited for the right moment. When a group of customers stood up, laughing too loudly, heading for the front door, I took my chance. I pushed my chair back casually, left some bills on the table for my half-eaten meal, and slid my phone into my pocket. My movements were calm, controlled, at least on the outside. Inside I was shaking. I walked toward the restrooms, keeping my eyes forward, not toward the back exit where I knew the kitchen doors stood. I could sense the man's gaze following me. My mouth was dry, my palms slick. The door swung open just as I reached the end of the hall, one of the kitchen staff exiting with a tray. I slipped inside before the door could shut, my heart pounding like I'd just committed a crime. The heat and chaos of the kitchen swallowed me instantly. Steam hissed from boiling pots. Knives chopped furiously against cutting boards, plates clattered as cooks shouted orders. It was a world apart from the quiet dining room, and for a moment, I almost believed I'd escaped. Then I saw her. The waitress appeared from behind a stack of trays, her face pale but determined. She didn't slow down, didn't give me more than a single glance before brushing past me, her lips barely moving. "Keep walking. Don't stop." I obeyed. My legs carried me toward the far end of the kitchen, weaving between cooks who barely noticed me in the flurry of dinner rush. I kept my head down, my shoulders hunched, praying that if anyone was watching, they'd assume I was just another employee on an errand. We reached the back door, the heavy steel one with a glowing red exit sign above it. The waitress pushed it open and the night air hit me like freedom. Cool, sharp, alive. But just as I stepped into the alley, a voice echoed behind me. "Hey." I froze. My stomach dropped. The waitress spun around, blocking the doorway, her small frame a fragile shield. "It's just trash," she called back toward the kitchen, holding up an empty crate as though she'd been heading outside for supplies. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were wide with fear. I didn't wait. I bolted down the alley, my shoes pounding against the cracked pavement. The walls loomed on either side, graffiti and shadows blurring together. I ran until my lungs burned, until the restaurant was nothing more than a glow behind me. Finally, I stopped, gasping, my back pressed against the cold bricks of a building. My hands shook so violently I could barely pull my phone from my pocket. The waitress had risked everything to get me out. She knew more than she could say, and if I wanted answers, I couldn't just disappear into the night. But for now, survival came first. I leaned against the wall, struggling to catch my breath. The night was silent except for the distant hum of traffic. But deep inside, I knew the silence was temporary. Because someone had tried to poison me. Someone had been watching me. And whoever they were, they wouldn't stop now that I'd slipped through their fingers. That night I thought I had escaped. But in truth, the game had only just begun. I didn't go home that night. Something inside me knew it wasn't safe. If they had eyes on me inside the restaurant, then they could easily have eyes on me outside. My apartment would be the first place they'd expect me to run to. So instead, I ducked into the shadows of the city, moving fast, weaving through streets until I found myself in a rundown cafe that stayed open late. I slid into the back corner, ordered a coffee I had no intention of drinking, and tried to calm the chaos inside my head. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. My chest tightened as I stared at the screen. I almost ignored it, but curiosity clawed at me. I answered, my voice low, cautious. "It's me," a hurried whisper said. "The waitress." "You need to get out of sight," she continued, her tone sharp with urgency. "Don't go home. Don't let anyone see you. They'll be looking." My grip tightened on the phone. "Who's they? Who are you talking about? Why did you warn me?" For a moment, silence. Just her quick breathing on the other end. Then finally, "I don't know everything, but I know enough. The drink was meant for you. They said your name in the kitchen before they sent it out. I don't know what they planned to do once you were unconscious, but it wasn't good." The cafe's low chatter seemed to fade away as her words sank in. "They said my name. This wasn't random. This wasn't some stranger's cruel trick. This was personal. Do you know who they are?" I pressed. She hesitated. I could almost hear her weighing the danger of her answer. "Not exactly. But I know the man who gave the order. He's been in before a few times. The staff whispers about him. They're scared of him. He doesn't eat, he just watches. Tonight he made a call, then spoke to the bartender. After that, they poured your drink." The image of the man in the dark coat came back to me. The way he'd stared without blinking, like a predator sizing up prey. My blood went cold. "You're telling me someone hired him?" "Someone I know." Her voice dropped even lower. "That's what it sounded like. He had a name. Yours. And he said, you wouldn't see it coming." I felt the walls of the cafe closing in around me. Whoever was behind this hadn't just wanted to scare me, they had wanted me gone. Erased. And the most terrifying part? Someone close to me had given them the reason. The waitress broke the silence. "You can't trust anyone. Not your friends. Not your family. Not until you know who's behind this." Her words cut deeper than she could have imagined. Friends. Family. I thought of faces I loved, people I trusted. Could one of them really want me dead? I wanted to argue, to tell her she was wrong, but deep inside something stirred. A memory. A recent fight. A bitter promise made in anger. Suddenly I wasn't so sure. I lowered my voice, forcing steadiness into my tone. "Then we find out who it is. Together." She didn't respond right away, but when she did, her voice carried a weight of reluctant resolve. "Meet me tomorrow night. Same cafe. Back corner. I'll tell you everything I know." The line went dead. I stared at my reflection in the darkened cafe window, my coffee untouched. For years I had believed betrayal came from strangers, from outside threats. But tonight, with a single poisoned drink and a hurried warning, I realized the truth. The real danger was closer than I had ever dared to imagine. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a minute. I lay in a cheap motel bed, the kind where the sheets smelled faintly of bleach and cigarettes, staring at the ceiling as my mind replayed every conversation, every argument, every bitter word exchanged in recent months. They said your name. Those words from the waitress wouldn't leave me. Someone hadn't just wanted to hurt me, they'd planned it, whispered about it, carried it out in secret. And whoever it was, they knew me well enough to want me silenced. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but adrenaline kept me moving. I needed to start somewhere. I needed to sift through my life like an investigator, hunting for the one face behind the shadows. The first name that came to mind was Ethan, my old business partner. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year, not since the deal went bad. Money had vanished from the company account, accusations flew, and in the end, I walked away while he was left with debts he swore weren't his fault. He had screamed at me, his face red with rage, promising I would regret what I'd done. Was this his revenge? Had he finally made good on his threat? The thought left a bitter taste in my mouth, but I couldn't ignore it. Next, my mind drifted to Marissa, my ex, beautiful, calculating, with a smile that hid daggers. Our breakup had been less about love lost and more about secrets exposed. She had wanted control, money, influence, and when I refused to bend, she left. But not before saying something that haunted me even now. If I can't have you, I'll make sure no one else can either. And then there was my brother, Daniel. Blood but hardly family anymore. Years of jealousy had rotted our relationship, his bitterness growing every time I achieved something he hadn't. We'd fought recently, over our parents' estate, over things that should have brought us together but instead tore us apart. He'd looked me in the eye and hissed, "You don't deserve any of this. One day it'll all come crashing down on you." Ethan, Marissa, Daniel. Each one carried their own knife ready to stab. But who had taken it this far? Who had paid a man in a dark coat to watch me, to poison me, to erase me? By the time evening came, I was back at the cafe, the same one where I'd spoken to the waitress the night before. I sat in the back corner, my hood up, eyes darting to the door every time it opened. And finally she came. The waitress slid into the seat across from me, her hair pulled back tightly, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her bag. She looked exhausted, her eyes carrying the weight of secrets too heavy for someone so young. "You came," I said softly. She nodded, her voice low. "I had to. I couldn't just let it happen. But you don't understand, this goes deeper than you think." My pulse quickened. "Then help me understand. Who are they? Why me?" Her gaze flicked around the cafe, making sure no one was listening. Then she leaned closer, her words barely audible. "I only caught pieces of the conversation, but I know this. The man who gave the order wasn't working alone. He got a call before he told the bartender what to do. And when he hung up, he said one thing: they'll never see it coming." The phrase twisted in my chest. It wasn't just about me being poisoned. It was about betrayal. A betrayal that was meant to be invisible until it was too late. The waitress reached into her bag and pulled out a small scrap of paper. She slid it across the table to me. I wrote down the number he called. "I don't know whose it is, but I thought, maybe you'd recognize it." My hands shook as I picked up the slip. 10 digits stared back at me. For a moment my brain refused to process it. But then, like a knife sliding between ribs, I realized who it belonged to. My stomach dropped. My throat tightened. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was confirmation. Someone I trusted. Someone I had loved or still loved had wanted me dead. The number on that paper was proof. And in that moment, the fear that had consumed me since last night turned to something else. Something sharper. Revenge. I stared at the slip of paper, the numbers blurring through the haze of shock. My mind fought against what my eyes already knew. I traced them again, slower this time, praying I was wrong. But the truth was carved into those digits, undeniable. The number belonged to Daniel. My own brother. For a long moment, the cafe around me disappeared. The clatter of cups, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low hum of conversations, all of it faded into nothing but the memory of his voice, spitting venom at me the last time we spoke. "You don't deserve any of this. One day it'll all come crashing down on you." I thought it was just anger. Just words spoken in the heat of resentment. But now I saw it for what it was. A promise. A prophecy. My blood ran cold. My own flesh and blood had wanted me gone. The waitress watched me, her expression tense. You know who it is, don't you? I swallowed hard, my throat dry as ash. Yeah, I whispered. I know. She looked at me with pity but also with something sharper, fear. Whoever it is, they won't stop. You escaped once. That means they'll try again. You have to be ready. Her words sliced through my grief like steel. He was right. The man in the dark coat hadn't been acting alone. He'd been hired, instructed, and if Daniel was behind this, then the poisoning was only the beginning. But why? Why would my own brother go this far? I thought of the estate, the money our parents had left behind. I thought of the deals I had made, the successes he had watched from the shadows of his failures. His jealousy had been simmering for years, boiling over into cruelty during our last fight. But still, murder? The betrayal hollowed me out from the inside. This wasn't just about greed or anger. This was about erasing me completely. I leaned forward, my voice a low growl. If he wants me gone, he'll find out what it feels like to lose everything. The waitress blinked at me, startled by the shift in my tone. What do you mean? I said, fire burning in my chest. It's time I stop running. He wanted me drugged, helpless, broken. But now I know the truth. And I'm going to make him pay for it. For the first time since this nightmare began, fear gave way to something stronger. Bigger. Cold, calculated anger. I rose from the table, the paper clenched in my fist. The waitress reached out, her hand brushing mine. Be careful, she whispered. He's already shown how far he's willing to go. I gave her a grim smile. So have I. As I stepped out into the night, the city lights glowing against the darkness, a strange calm washed over me. Daniel thought I was weak, that I wouldn't see it coming. But now I had clarity. I wasn't just his target anymore. I was his reckoning. And by the time I was finished, Daniel would wish he'd never picked up that phone. I walked out of that cafe with my brother's number burning a hole in my pocket like a live coal. Every step I took was heavier than the last, weighed down by betrayal and rage. Daniel hadn't just turned against me. He had tried to erase me, to wipe me from existence as if I were nothing more than an obstacle standing in the way of what he thought he deserved. But he'd underestimated me. Daniel had always seen me as soft. Too trusting. Too forgiving. Maybe once he was right. But that night, the night the waitress slipped me that note, something inside me shifted. I wasn't going to the police. I wasn't going to beg for help. This was personal. And the only justice I'd accept would be the kind I delivered myself. I started planning. Quietly. Carefully. First I needed proof. Proof of what he had done. Proof of his intent. The waitress had given me the first piece of the puzzle. His number, the call he'd made before my drink arrived. That was enough to open the door, but I needed more. So I began watching him. Daniel thought he was clever, thought he could hide behind shadows and hired hands. But he never expected me to turn the tables. I followed him discreetly, sitting in corners of cafes where he held hushed meetings, standing across the street while he slipped envelopes to men with faces too cold to be trusted. Every move he made painted a clearer picture of his guilt. And then came the break I was waiting for. One night, I watched from a distance as Daniel met with the man in the dark coat, the same man from the restaurant. Their conversation was muffled, carried on the wind, but I heard enough. Next time, no mistakes, Daniel said, his voice sharp, angry. The man nodded. It'll be clean. Quick. He won't even know. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm. I recorded everything, every word, every threat. Now I had what I needed. The waitress helped me with the final piece. With her insider knowledge, we devised a trap. We set up a meeting that Daniel couldn't resist. An opportunity, bait that would lure him into thinking his plan was finally working. She agreed to deliver me into the right place at the right time, playing the part of a reluctant accomplice. And when the night came, everything unfolded perfectly. Daniel walked in, smug and confident, certain that his little game was about to end with my silence. He didn't see me waiting in the shadows. He didn't notice the small cameras I had hidden, the microphone recording every word. Where is he? Daniel demanded, his voice impatient. You said he'd be here. I'm paying you enough to make this worth your while. That was when I stepped into the light. His face drained of color instantly, his mouth hanging open. He stammered. Me, I said, my voice cold, steady. You didn't see this coming, did you, brother? He tried to recover, tried to twist the situation, but it was too late. Every word he spoke, every desperate denial, every half-baked excuse. It was all being recorded. And when I played back his earlier meeting with the man in the dark coat, his expression told me everything I needed to know. Daniel was finished. But I wasn't done yet. "See, Daniel," I said, stepping closer, "you could have just hated me. You could have walked away. But you wanted more. You wanted me gone. No. Now you get to lose everything instead." I left him there, broken, trapped, exposed. By the time the authorities arrived, tipped off anonymously with undeniable evidence, my brother's empire of lies had already crumbled. His reputation was shredded, his accounts frozen, his allies scattering like rats from a sinking ship. Daniel had tried to poison me, but in the end it was his own greed that destroyed him. And the best part? He never saw it coming. The night the police took Daniel away, I stood in the shadows, watching as they pushed him into the back of a cruiser. His face, once smug and full of arrogance, was pale and twisted with panic. He shouted, cursed, tried to pin the blame anywhere but on himself. But the evidence was undeniable. His words, his meetings, his plan, it was all laid bare. For years he had been my brother. My blood. We'd grown up under the same roof, shared the same table, laughed at the same jokes. But standing there I realized he had never truly been my family. Family doesn't try to erase you. Family doesn't hire strangers to poison you. Family doesn't turn love into betrayal. That night I lost a brother. But I also gained something else. Clarity. Strength. I met the waitress outside the cafe a few nights later. She looked tired, haunted by the role she had played in saving me, in exposing him. She tried to brush it off, said she was just doing the right thing. But I knew the truth. Without her I wouldn't be alive. Without her Daniel would have succeeded. "You saved my life," I told her quietly. She shook her head. "No. You saved yourself. I just gave you the chance." We shared a silence that said more than words ever could. Two strangers, bound together by one terrible night that had nearly destroyed me. And yet, in a strange way, that night had rebuilt me instead. In the days that followed, I watched the world react to Daniel's downfall. Headlines painted him as the architect of his own ruin. Corruption, fraud, conspiracy. His allies turned their backs, his wealth crumbled, and the empire he had built on jealousy and greed collapsed into ash. For me, life didn't go back to normal. It couldn't. I carried scars now, unseen but etched into my soul. The kind that remind you every time you close your eyes how close you came to losing everything. But I also carried something else. A new fire. I would never again walk blindly through life, trusting without question, ignoring the shadows at the edge of the room. I had learned that danger doesn't always come from strangers. Sometimes it sits at your table, smiling, calling itself family. And yet I wasn't broken. I was sharper, stronger, alive. That night at the restaurant, the poisoned glass, the trembling note, the waitress's whispered warning had changed me forever. When I look back now, I don't just see the terror. I see the moment I woke up. The moment I stopped being a victim and became something else entirely. Someone who doesn't wait for justice to be handed to them, but takes it into their own hands. The waitress slipped me a note. "Don't drink it." She thought she was saving me from a poisoned glass. But the truth is, she saved me from something far worse. She saved me from the person I used to be.